I think consistency is a big one. Being one step ahead of the guests, that's the A, the anticipatory service. Knowing what they need before they even have to ask.
They need to take a big step up in terms of experience, in terms of service to make it 5-star. But if anyone in the process or the journey really lets the team down, it will be hard to get 5 stars. My name is Jack Thomas, one of the co-founders of The Fit Guide, which is the global standard of excellence for the fitness industry. Welcome to the 5-Star Fitness podcast. This show is all about bringing the very best from hospitality into the fitness industry so that we can build better, more profitable businesses and impact more people. I'm joined today by Matt Lavender, co-founder of The Fit Guide. Welcome, Matt. And today we are talking about what is the difference between a 4-star and a 5-star gym. Of course, now we have our award of excellence, which is kind of our second tier award. And then we have our 5-star award, which only around 4 or 5% of the clubs we've visited have managed to achieve. And I want to first go back to your background in hotels. What's the difference between a 4-star and a 5-star hotel?
Yeah, I mean, anyone that's watched our earlier episode, we talked a little bit about sort of the history of the star rating system. So I won't go over that in too much detail. But I think, first of all, it's sort of important to recognize that there are different ways of measuring the 4-star, 5-star. And Forbes Travel Guide, who I used to work for, they only visited the very best hotels in the world. I think most people would consider all of the 2,000 plus that they visit to be a 5-star traditionally. But within those 2,000, 2,500 hotels they visit, there's only 336 that are 5-star. That doesn't mean that the 4-star are in any way poor. In fact, they're also incredible. But I suppose if we were to try to look at, what it is that the 5-star hotels, again, by Forbes standards, are doing that maybe the 4-stars aren't, I think consistency is a big one. So, to get 5 stars, you need to get 90% plus in your evaluation. Same scoring system, actually, that we've used. And, I think to get 90% plus, you really have to be getting most things right virtually all of the time, and you need to have that consistency. A hotel inspector will stay for 2 nights, 3 nights, so it only takes one bad experience really to sort of bring that down. So getting things right all the time is good, but I think you can. I always sort of say, well, look, you start off with the foundations of service, right? So you've got to get those foundations right virtually all the time, because there's sort of no excuse for not smiling, not making eye contact, not wearing a good uniform. all of those basics, those fundamentals of hospitality. On the facility side, it may only make up 35% or say 25 to 30% of the score, but of course you have to have incredible amenities, incredible facilities, incredible food, all that sort of stuff. That can almost be bought, right? If you've got a rich owner, they can invest in that, but you do have to get that right to get your sort of 30%. Then there's the technical aspects of the job. So really knowing the standards and doing things technically well and not forgetting to do anything. So all of that will probably actually, if you get all of that right, that would get you up to that sort of 80% mark, which would be enough for 4 stars. But I think what really gets those hotels into that 90%, apart from everything we've talked about and doing it consistently, are sort of certain elements of service that really go above and beyond. So we'll talk about this a lot more, I'm sure, in a future episode. But the mind the gap, as I like to call it, the genuine interest, getting to know your guests, really creating those personal connections and building rapport with them is one, and that can be done in several ways, which again we'll talk about. Being one step ahead of the guests, that's the A, the anticipatory service. Knowing what they need before they even have to ask, going above and beyond. And then the P is sort of personalization. And, mostly I think of that as sort of name usage, because I think that's a really key way to show that you know the guest. But it's not just that. It's also remembering preferences, like what type of coffee they have in the morning, or I don't know, particular amenity that they like in their room, so that when they come next time, it's in there. So I've kind of talked for a little while there, but I think, in essence, get all of those foundations right, get the technical things right, get the facilities right, do it consistently, and then to get 5 stars, you really need to go into that sort of next level service.
It was interesting for me because during a trip to Singapore, we evaluated you evaluated two hotels.
Right.
But I was with you and I was staying with you as well. And so, of course, we checked out the restaurant and the public areas and obviously stayed in the room and everything else. And they both scored 4 stars, both of those ones. And it was interesting for me because I really thought the service was good, but not really much more than that. And I think they got obviously we won't name the hotels, but they got low 4 stars. And it was kind of clear to me then, the structure, the design, the breakfast, the food was all decent, probably close to 5-star, if not 5-star. But the service was sort of definitely lacking in some areas. That was quite clear and quite obvious. And your conversations with the general managers, they had their reasons for that, hard to recruit or train or whatever it might be. But it was clear to me, it seemed about right. This is a low 4-star. And it was clear to me, they need to take a big step up in terms of experience, in terms of service to make it 5-star. So bringing that concept into gyms, our award of excellence is essentially our second-tier awards. You could say it's very similar to a 4-star award. We did call it 4 stars in our first year evaluations. They're still good. What are these gyms doing to achieve that mark? And that really is our benchmark for the fitness industry, right? We want every gym to be scoring at least 80%, at least our award of excellence.
Yeah, so I think, a large part of our evaluation is the class itself, right? So that makes up 50% of the total score. So I think, that's obviously clearly going to have a big impact. And I think there are a lot of parallels. I think getting the technical aspects right, remembering to do an injury check, remembering to set timers beforehand or end the class well, all of those sort of stuff. I think those 4 stars will be consistently getting the technical aspects of the job and getting those foundations right. And of course, even on the service side, I think it's really important to stress that award of excellence. It's something to be really proud of, right? We purposely set the bar super high. We brought in standards from hospitality, which probably very few clubs and studios are doing or were doing, but we felt could be doing. There's no reason why not. And so that bar is set very high, and I think they are doing most things very well. But it's probably consistency. You might, for example, you'd have one person did do something during arrival, but then they didn't afterwards as well. So everything I've spoken about really is they're probably getting the foundations right. It's a great class, good facilities, but there were just a few things lacking here or there, and a lot of that could just be inconsistently. Not that they can't do it, but they do it sometimes and not always.
What I love about the Award of Excellence and the benchmark that we've given is, yes, we have set the bar high, but I really believe that every club should be doing it, but let's reframe that, can do it. You don't need spectacular facilities. Even if the instructor is also checking people in and out, you can absolutely get 4 stars or Award of Excellence, and it's definitely possible still to get 5, although a little bit harder. And I really think it's just a solid benchmark that even if you've got a small yoga studio with very little budget, you can't really invest in training, you can't build this incredible facilities, you've perhaps only got one shower that people need to share, you absolutely can, and I would argue should be getting the Award of Excellence, and I think that's a good benchmark. Below that, 70 to 80% we have recommended, and look, it's still a good experience. They're doing a lot of things right, but just not enough to really be awarded, within our system, within our ratings process. And then, of course, any gym under 70% doesn't get recognized by the Fit Guide, of course. We don't list them, although we do share the report with the gyms that we visit, and that's actually sparked some great conversations with gyms that have wanted to get better.
I think just touching on something you just mentioned as well, if you look at the actual number of standards, say in a hotel, let's say minimum 600, that actually means that each standard may be worth something between 0.1 and 0.25%, which actually means you can miss a lot of standards and still get 5 stars. So there are some standards which some hotels would never get. Perhaps their bathrooms are just small by design. Maybe it's an old building, and so you'll probably miss the standard that the bathroom is not spacious enough for 2 people to dress comfortably, for example. Fine, I always say don't focus on those kind of things. You're not going to go and change your building structure. And I think we see it the same in some of these gyms. We will go to gyms where their concept is not to have huge facilities and lots of amenities and things like that. And if that's their concept, that's fine. But there are plenty of those that if you do everything else right, if you do the things that you can do, you get the service right, you can still get 5 stars. Because even with 250 standards, right, it's not 1% for one standard. It's probably, without doing the maths, like 0.4 or something 98.4%. So you can miss a lot of things and still get 90% plus. So I always say focus on the things that you can do and do those well.
Absolutely. And then if we look at the 5-star clubs, our highest award, and around 4%, 5% have scored this award, and then we only visit sort of the top 10 to 20% in each city. So we say this really represents the top 1, maybe 2% in the fitness industry, really the best of the best. What are these clubs doing to make themselves stand out from the Award of Excellence clubs?
Yeah, I mean, going back to what we said earlier and talked about that mind the gap, the genuine interest, anticipatory service and personalization. I thought what was really interesting when we really crunched the data, and we talked about this in Vegas, is that even though those things are really, really important, they don't make up a huge percentage of the report, right? There's a couple of opportunities where you can use name usage, and there's maybe one standard for genuine interest, one for anticipatory service. But there was a really strong correlation between the ones that got those standards and the ones that got 5 stars. So it's not necessarily they're doing them, that's why they got 5 stars, because it doesn't count for that many standards or percentage. It's more that it's a really good indication that these types of clubs and studios clearly have a strong focus on offering a great level of hospitality. Perhaps they've had training, perhaps they've had someone like me come in and say, look, you should be doing these things. And that filters down to everything else. If you're well trained in hospitality in general, I think you get the basics right, and it probably reflects all aspects of the journey, that they've just got that mindset. You talked about culture in a different episode as well. So they are doing those things, but it's not because they're doing those things that they've got 5 star. It's just that's an indication of an all-round great experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's infused into the culture.
Absolutely.
And they just do it almost unconsciously, right? Obviously with the systems and the training and stuff to make sure that it's done in the right way. I think what's interesting for me with the 5-star experiences and 5-star clubs is they really have to be consistent across the whole experience. To give some idea on the weighting, so 50% when we visit a boutique is the class experience. So that really has to be quite good, right? And if that is exceptional, if they score close to 100%, let's say, they can then afford perhaps for the public areas to be not so great. Maybe the website, they lose a couple of points there. Front desk experience still has to be quite good, but doesn't have to be exceptional, let's say. And then they can still score 5 stars. But if anyone in the process or the journey really lets the team down, it will be hard to get 5 stars. And I think that's right, and I think that's fair. If the coach does an absolutely phenomenal job, the person checking you in does a phenomenal job, but the person checking out is quite rude and distant and doesn't want to be there, that does have a very negative impact on the experience. And it might seem a little harsh that one person could bring them down to 4 stars, but I think that's right, and I think that's well represented in our process and in our in our scoring system as well. So I think it's that consistency that's really needed across the journey. If we just finish off with just a couple of tips. I mean, obviously we'll be digging deeper on this podcast and going really deep into like mind the gap that you talked about, genuine interest, anticipatory service and personalization. We'll be going deep into that, but let's maybe give 2 little tips.
I think, just infuse a culture of hospitality from day one. I think it's, especially if you're a new club owner, you're thinking of setting it up, decide that you're going to provide a good level of hospitality right from the start. Write it into your SOPs. Get training before you've even opened your doors. It is possible to retrospectively retrain staff and get them into that mindset. But if you start with that mindset, I think that will really set you off in good stead. So I'll probably put that one as my first one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yours? What have you got?
Well, we've been through that journey.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that from day one. It took a long, long time to change that. And perhaps we'll do another episode on that as well. I think map out the whole member journey from start to finish.
Good one.
Of course, you can download our report, which has a lot of our standards. So that will really give you some ideas of some of the things that we look for. But put that to one side for a moment. Just how do they first find out about your gym or your club? Perhaps it's an SEO search. Perhaps it's Instagram. So actually go into your website and try and get in the mind of that new customer, that new member. What are they seeing? How does that represent your brand? The imagery that's used, the copy that's used. When they book a class, what kind of email do they get? How easy is that booking process? When they arrive at the gym, and you could actually just go to the gym and take a step back and just see what your front desk team do and just get an idea of what is that first time member journey. And again, we're going to go deeper into this in another episode. The class experience, after the class, post-class. So just map out the journey from start to finish. And I think quite quickly, if you do that with intention, you'll have some ideas.
Yeah, I like it.
One more from you?
One more from me. I think, find some. Oh, okay, here's one. Look at your business regularly, and what I mean by that is do some kind of audit, some kind of inspection. Whether it's call us in, but even internally, constantly reassess how you're doing and take people through that journey. Ideally, somebody anonymously that could come in and go through the standards, and then really take on that feedback. You mentioned it in a previous episode. Sometimes gym owners they don't see what's really going on. It's the same with general managers in hotels, kind of walk around in a bubble. It's like wherever they go, there's a sort of 10-meter radius of people doing things well, because they know the GM is there or the studio owner. And so I think you need to really have some an honest regular audit, inspection, evaluation, what you want to call it, and then take that feedback, share it, and continuously use it to improve.
Yeah, I think there's so many different angles I could take for the seconds here, but I'm going to go with just look and see if there's any easy wins within your studio.
Right.
Is the studio clean and tidy?
Yeah.
Is the equipment where it should be? Mm-hmm. Is the front desk cluttered? Do you have a staff uniform, for example? Are your staff well groomed? Mm-hmm. We have standards around all of this, and again, you can look at our report and see some of the standards that we've highlighted there. But often there's just a few little easy wins where actually getting a bit of elbow grease and cleaning the mirror or cleaning the equipment once a day really might make the difference. And these things are important to people, right? If they see that if they do go down to do a push-up and they see that underneath the treadmill, there's lots of dust and dirt, which is something that I've experienced before at a gym, that's going to quite strongly negatively affect that person's experience, and they might not even come back. So just look and see if there's any easy wins. Look, of course, we'll be digging deeper into this and really how to improve from a hospitality perspective. If you think that you would benefit from more hospitality within your gym, if you think the fitness industry needs this, make sure that you like this video, you subscribe to this podcast or this YouTube channel, and also subscribe to our weekly newsletter. We share industry news, insights, educational resources on how to improve your gym and how to bring in more hospitality. Thank you for listening or watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.